Every spring, Everest draws climbers from around the globe, dreamers, record seekers, and those willing to gamble their lives for a single step on the roof of the world. Heading into 2025, the warnings were everywhere. Analysts predicted record crowding. Climate scientists warned about melting ice and shifting weather patterns. Veterans of the mountain feared that Everest was about to see its deadliest year yet. But when the season closed, the story shocked everyone. Instead of a mass tragedy, Everest recorded one of its safest years in modern memory. Out of nearly 800 successful summits, only 5 climbers lost their lives. By Everest standards, that number is astonishingly low. So what happened? How did a season expected to become the bloodiest in history turn into one of the calmest? The answer reveals as much about human preparation as it does about the mountain itself. Better rescues, stricter rules, smarter logistics, and maybe a bit of luck all combined to rewrite what could have been a disaster. This is the story of Everest in 2025, the year that was supposed to be the deadliest, but became something very different. To understand why 2025 stands out, we first need to look back. Because Everest's past few years have been anything but forgiving. In 2023, Everest endured its deadliest spring season on record. 18 climbers lost their lives. Some collapsed from exhaustion, others succumbed to altitude sickness, and many were caught in traffic jams high in the death zone. The haunting images of endless lines of climbers inching toward the summit, oxygen masks fogging, eyes glazed became a symbol of everything wrong with modern Everest. In 2024, the numbers were slightly better, but still grim. That year, 861 climbers reached the summit, a record number, but 8 died. Even with improved forecasting and management, nearly 1 out of every 100 climbers never came home. And so, as the 2025 season approached, expectations were bleak. The Nepali government had issued hundreds of permits. Expedition companies were selling Everest as aggressively as ever, and climate instability meant weather windows were unpredictable. Experts predicted the worst. Some feared 2025 could surpass 2023 as the most lethal season in history. But when the climbing window finally opened and teams moved toward the summit, something surprising unfolded. The mountain still claimed lives, but far fewer than anyone anticipated. Instead of being the deadliest, Everest 2025 turned into one of the safest seasons in decades. So how did 2025 defy expectations? How did a season everyone feared would become Everest's deadliest turn into one of its safest? The answer lies in 4 key factors. First, helicopters changed the game. In 2025, rescue teams reached altitudes never thought possible before. Climbers suffering from altitude sickness or frostbite were evacuated from camps IM Roman 2 in record time. In previous years, those same cases would have turned fatal, but this season, they were pulled off the mountain before their conditions became reversible. Second, Sherpa safety improved. Historically, Sherpas, despite their unmatched experience, have suffered many of the mountain's worst casualties. In 2025, a combination of better insurance, stronger logistics, and improved risk management meant fewer Sherpa deaths. Their lives, often overlooked in commercial climbing, were protected with more respect and resources than ever before. Third, stricter summit timing. One of the biggest killers on Everest is summit fever, the refusal to turn back, even when conditions deteriorate. But in 2025, many teams adhered to stricter turnaround times. Climbers who were too slow or too late were forced to retreat, harsh in the moment but life-saving in the long run. Fourth, stronger medical infrastructure. Base camp and even higher camps were equipped with improved medical facilities. Cases of high-altitude pulmonary edema and cardiac emergencies were treated earlier. For the first time, Everest felt less like an isolated wilderness and more like a managed environment where intervention was actually possible. Together, these changes reshaped the season. They didn't make Everest safe, nothing ever will, but they created a margin of survival that was missing in past years. And so, while 5 climbers still lost their lives, dozens more were saved. In Everest terms, that's nothing short of remarkable. Numbers often reveal what emotions can't, and the statistics from 2025 tell a remarkable story. Let's start with the most important figure: 5 deaths in total. 3 occurred above base camp, 1 at Campi from a sudden medical collapse, and 1 Sherpa at base camp. Compared to Everest's long and deadly history, this is a surprisingly low number. Now, compare it to recent years. 2023, 18 deaths. 2024, 8 deaths. 2025, 5 deaths. It marks a consistent decline, and 2025 stands out as the safest of the 3. What about summits? In 2025, around 786 climbers reached the summit. That's fewer than 2024 record-breaking 861, but still one of the highest totals in history. The fatality rate is the real eye-opener. In 2023, the ratio of deaths to summits painted a grim picture. Nearly 2% of all climbers didn't make it back. In 2024, it dropped to about 1%, and in 2025, it fell to well under 1%. Statistically speaking, 2025 wasn't just not the deadliest, it was one of the safest ever seasons ever recorded. But behind every statistic is a human story. Each of those 5 deaths represented a climber who had dreamed of this mountain for years, if not decades. Families were left grieving. Friends were left with memories cut short. The numbers may be encouraging, but they don't erase the weight of that loss. And they don't erase the risk still present on Everest. Because no matter how many statistics we look at, Everest will always be a place where survival is never guaranteed. Even in 2025, one of Everest's safest years, the mountain reminded everyone why it is called the roof of the world. One climber from the Philippines collapsed near Camp Roman 4, high on the slopes in the death zone. Another, an Indian climber, died near the Hillary Step just meters from the summit. Imagine coming so close, only to fall short at the very last stage. At lower elevations, the risks were just as real. A Sherpa died at base camp from cerebral edema, a swelling of the brain triggered by altitude. Another succumbed to sudden cardiac arrest, proving that even the strongest and most seasoned climbers are never immune. There was also the mountain itself, unpredictable and merciless. In April, a massive rockfall thundered down near 8,000 meters. Miraculously, no one was killed, but the event left teams shaken. It was a reminder that Everest doesn't need crowds or storms to kill, it can unleash danger without warning. So yes, the statistics show 2025 is safer than usual, but Everest never becomes safe. The death zone still stretches your body of life step by step. Avalanches, icefall collapses, altitude sickness all remain threats that no technology can erase. The lesson of 2025 is not that Everest has been tamed. It's that even in a year of relative mercy, the mountain still demands respect. Everest in 2025 wasn't just about fewer deaths, it was also about a glimpse into the future of mountaineering, a future where technology is rewriting what it means to climb the highest mountain on Earth. One of the biggest talking points of the season was pre-acclimatization using xenon gas. A handful of climbers prepared at sea level with this cutting-edge method, which mimics the low oxygen conditions of altitude. As a result, they were able to skip weeks of acclimatization at base camp and complete their climbs in a fraction of the usual time. Some summited Everest in less than a week. For supporters, this was a breakthrough. Less time in the death zone means fewer chances for frostbite, altitude sickness, or deadly mistakes. Technology, they argue, could finally tip the scales toward safety, but not everyone celebrated. Many Sherpa leaders and veteran climbers saw it differently. For them, Everest is not just a mountain, it's a proving ground. The hardship, the acclimatization, the weeks of waiting and adapting to the altitude, those are part of what makes the climb meaningful. Strip that away, and Everest risks becoming just another checklist adventure, divorced from the spirit of mountaineering. Helicopter rescues also stirred debate. While life-saving, they spark questions. Should climbers depend on quick evacuation, or should Everest remain a place where self-reliance is the ultimate law? This tension between innovation and tradition is shaping the mountain's future. Will Everest become safer, more accessible, and perhaps more crowded? Or will climbers push back, insisting that the world's highest peak must remain a place of raw challenge, where suffering and patience are part of the price? In 2025, the answer wasn't clear, but the conversation had begun, and it may define Everest for decades to come. So, what does 2025 tell us about the future of Everest? First, it proves that better management works. Stricter turnaround times, improved logistics, and stronger medical support all contributed to fewer deaths. When climbers, guides, and Sherpas commit to discipline, lives are saved. Second, it highlights the growing role of technology. Helicopter rescues, pre-acclimatization methods, and advanced forecasting reduce risks that once felt inevitable. Everest may never be safe, but with the right tools, it can be survivable for more people. But here's the paradox. Does making Everest safer also strip away its meaning? For decades, the mountain has stood as the ultimate test of human endurance. Every climber who reached the summit did so knowing the risks were extreme. If we minimize those risks too much, does Everest become less of an achievement? The answer depends on perspective. For some, summiting Everest will always be an extraordinary accomplishment, whether with Sherpa support, supplemental oxygen, or even helicopters on standby. For others, true Everest will always be the raw climb, weeks of suffering, battling altitude sickness, and facing the mountain with nothing but grit. What 2025 shows is that both versions can exist. Everest can be safer without losing its soul. But the balance must be carefully managed. Too much reliance on technology, and it becomes a mountain for tourism. Too little adaptation, and it remains a mountain of needless death. Ultimately, the lesson of 2025 is this: Everest doesn't have to be the deadliest year after year. With discipline, humility, and respect, the deadliest mountain can also give us seasons of life instead of loss. Heading into 2025, many believed Everest was destined for disaster. The warnings were loud: too many permits, too much crowding, and a mountain growing more unstable each year. It seemed inevitable that Everest would claim more lives than ever before, but the mountain and those who climbed it wrote a different story. With better rescue systems, stricter rules, smarter preparation, and perhaps a touch of luck, 2025 became one of the safest Everest seasons in memory. Out of nearly 800 summits, only 5 climbers died. By Everest standards, that is extraordinary. Still, the lesson is not that Everest has been tamed. The risks remain, always. The death zone will always strip life away one breath at a time. Avalanches will always strike without warning, and the human drive for glory will always push some climbers too far. What 2025 showed us is possibility. That discipline and preparation can save lives. That respect for the mountain must come before ambition. And that Everest doesn't always have to be defined by death, because at 8,848 meters, survival is the true summit. And in 2025, Everest reminded us that even its deadliest reputation can sometimes be rewritten.